Well, hello, my tuber brothers and sisters. Been a long time since the Pestle Man here has come and made a video, and I thought I'd just shoot a little one here telling a story about the day that I found my Clovis cache, which is probably my claim to fame as a artifact hunter. It's about 35 years or so hunting artifacts. Well, as you see here, these aren't necessarily Clovis points, although this one here is sure a beauty. Clovis caches don't necessarily mean all points. They just mean caches of stuff that Clovis people left. It was only found about 10 miles from the Petrified National Forest, and I'd gone looking for a petrified wood Clovis. I was hopeful that's what it was, and it looked like it. Anyway, as it turns out not to be. A while back, my hump bud, Russ, and I got to looking at it under a microscope, and we discovered these little colored places, little color swirly things that you see in there are actually look like little forest, little mossy growths, little forests of moss, which makes it, by definition, a moss agate. Now, moss agates are just a common term. They're actually some cryptocrystal, highly silicate, cryptocrystalline mineral. Actually the name goes on a lot longer than that. But okay, here's the essence of this point. Okay, this was the side that was up, and it was sitting on about a 3/4 of an inch high little hard clay pedestal. And who knows how long it had been sitting there with sand blowing over the top of it and then blowing off again. There's a lot of wind-blown sand in that part of Arizona. Plus, there was a cattle trail, I don't know, not more than 20, 25 yards away that was well-traveled. There's been a dozen or so cattle walked up and down it that day, but this Clovis point had sat out there since time immemorial, just being unmolested. Now, so this side up here is very polished, as you can see. It's got a real shiny, wind-borne polish from, tiny, tiny particles of sand blowing over it. And then this side over here has got a very unique white stuff on it, which is, they call white lace ground stain, but it's not a ground stain per se. It's an actual change in the mineral content from minerals being absorbed on the underside, which is typically wetter, and so it changes. It goes up there and mixes with the minerals in the moss agate, and it basically changes it over time. And it's, as you can see down there, there's a few little of the little lichens that were on there that I left. I went out hunting specifically for a petrified wood Clovis. I lusted after one for a couple decades, and I finally said, well, I'm just going to go get one. So out I went, and I had some pretty good ideas on where to look. I went as close to the Petrified National Forest in Arizona off Highway 40 as I could get without being on governmental lands of any kind, on private land. I got permission to hunt it, and I knew the area. I'd hunted up and down the Puerco River and the Little Colorado River up there for a couple decades, hoping to get lucky, and never did. Found many other Arizona points. But when it was kind of unusual how I found this. I had found, coming up to the area, I had found 2 or 3 little Utrapa flakes, where, called overshot flakes in English. And they're very distinctive of the Clovis culture. Virtually no other culture in America used them as a standard way of making their points, but it's a really fast way to make points. You can hit them really hard to make them, and you also can keep your fingers out of the way, it's safer for your fingers. And hurting a finger back in paleo times could have meant death from infection or lots of other ways. So anyway, I saw something shining. Oh, I don't know. It had to be 20, 30 yards away. And there were a lot of shiny rocks out there. And so and the sun angle was just right that I was getting a real clear reflection off of it. It's a real shiny point. There was just something about it that intrigued me. And I started getting this sense of anticipation long before I got near it. And it just kind of drove me to, I don't know if you've ever done this, but I've seen things from a ways off and then walked around, an obstacle or two to get there and never found them again. There's lots of flint and things laying around and your eye just doesn't catch on it again from that angle. But at any rate, I just kept my eyes just focused on it, and I was walking in an area that had rattlesnakes and little low cactus that you could kick with your shoes, and I was just wearing Nike tennis shoes, and I was at peril. But at any rate, I walked up to it, and by the time I was about 30 feet away, I could see that it was a point, and my heart was just racing. I knew, I just had this sense of anticipation. I don't know if many of you have experienced that when in your heart you feel a quickening and you're about to find something, and you haven't got there yet, and you got no way of knowing what it is, but something inside you is making you say, yeah, it's gonna be something. Well, at any rate, once I got up there, I saw this thing on the surface. It was sitting there on a little pedestal. The area where I was hunting, there was blow sand around it that was about half an inch to an inch and a half thick. And so I just hunted through that, got down on my knees and just worked my fingers like a raking through that blow sand. And while I did, I came up with numerous pieces of flint down there, but I came up with these three things here. Now note on the back of this, there's the white ground stain that I talked about earlier, and it's not a ground stain, but it is caused by one side being up and the other side being down. And but this was attached to a pedestal, so it had sat like this for eons. And so this side had stayed down, and this side here was getting windblown by really fine dust, and so it just polished off that one side. Now all these pieces over here, they were in the loose area. So as time goes on, they'd been getting rolled around. So some areas would get the white ground stain. That might even be original cortex, those extremely solid white areas. But you can see down here, it's got various stages of the white ground stain and the coloration, and it's, some kind of just a pokey tool, just stabby, pokey, perforator kind of thing. And it's made of the exact same material as this guy here, which means that it came off the same mother stone. Now, here's another one with the exact same story, and this would be a little just flake blade cutter knife, and it almost certainly, that was almost certainly on the original cortex, or it had just laid in this position for a long time, maybe even longer than this one, because it's got the solid white lace on, a solid white lace. And again, it's the same stone. You look at it, it's got the same stone. Now, and here's the last one, which was some kind of crude little finger drill. You've all seen one. And man, I've wondered over the years what would happen if I'd have gone back out there and dug. I never did. I had an accident just a few months after I got back home to California. And I've been in a wheelchair ever since, and you got to hike quite a ways to get into this spot, and I've never made it. My hunt bud went back there looking, and he says he couldn't locate it. He said he didn't remember which exactly the place would, and you've got a large, there's a whole long hillside. I ran my fingers through went out about 5 or probably 6 feet in all sides in a circle. Like 5 or 6 foot radius from where I'd found the point. So it's maybe 10, 12 feet across. And in that area, I found a number of pieces of flint, but I kept the ones that seemed to match up. And this little broken drill was real close to it. And for a long time, I thought it was a piece of the same mother stone as all of these here. Just these 3, these 4, undoubtedly came from the same mother stone, and they had been packed in a while. These weren't just left over there from this one being made, because this one has been used quite a bit. It's got a lot of the signs of having been resharpened. Like, for instance, you see along this edge here, you can see where these flakes intruded into the flake scar, and you don't get that unless you've been resharpening on it after you had the flute ran, and they run the flutes first. But I just love this point. But anyway, one of these days when I'm wealthy enough to get a quad and I'm going back, it's on my bucket list. And if there's really anybody who's really adventuresome out there, I'm telling you, I know where a Clovis cache is. And I'm the only one that's ever pulled anything from it. Nobody's ever dug. But I'm also torn. I might want to just have the somebody from like the U of A, some of the archaeologists there, go in with me and make it a sanctioned dig. I would really prefer that if they would. But I don't know if the landowner will agree to that. Because a lot of times, once you've got a special Indian site on your land, the government pretty much takes control of it, and your ranchers are, don't have any sense of humor about that. As you can see, I've assembled 3 out of my collection that are very similar style. They're almost exactly the same Clovis point. Now, I found the one on the far left. The other 2 I either bought or swapped for with people who found them or got them in collections. They're obviously legit Clovises. And that's just kind of interesting there. Some of them are kind of flute challenged. This one here, the flute didn't travel far, but it's got all the other signs of being a Clovis. This one here has got a really cool little thing that over time, just a little section of it was weaker, or there was a little fossil there or something. I think I see a little fossil in there that just got eroded out over the years, over the eons. I think it gives a character, though. I'm not one that goes for perfect tools, points and artifacts and relics. I like stuff that just shows character. That shows that the guys used it and it happened. And now, hey, this is just a quick heads up and a shout out to my friend Folsom Blues 28. Now listen, this guy here has barely any subscribers. He gets barely, look at that, 31 views. And this is probably one of the nicest Harahays I have ever seen found. Anyway, 3 likes, 0 dislikes. Anyway, now here's who he is. Folsom Blues 28, Northern Oklahoma. And now look at some of the titles going down his list. This guy finds some of the coolest points. So listen, give this man some love and the respect he deserves. Get on over there and throw a sub to Clovis Blues 28. Just a heck of a guy. You'll love him.